Welcome back to the Student Hub Live. The focus of this session is how to pass your Access module. Something I think all students need to know. And George, you've made a fantastic video about all of that. And Sarah, you're here from our student support team in Manchester. So we're going to talk about this very important issue. George, could you reiterate the main points and explain why you decided to make a video about how to pass your Access module?
Well, for whatever reason you're studying, whether it's for fun, whether it's to go on to another module to continue your degree.
To look after your snake better.
To look after your snake better, yes, indeed, or your monkey or your rat. You probably want to pass. You probably want to do as best as you can. And I think even though assessment is not the main point of studying an Access module, it's not the most important thing, it's a good idea to have a really clear idea about what it is you need to do to pass. And then once you've got that clear in your mind, you just don't need to worry about it anymore. Okay. Which is why we made the video. And if you happen to watch it again, I want you to imagine me balancing on a box of photocopier paper so that I was the right height. It was, yes, very high tech.
Brilliant. So let's see some of the main points then that you were talking about in terms of the components of the module.
Well, we've got 4 TMAs, tutor marked assignments, and we've got 5 ICMAs, which are interactive computer marked assignments. And I think we've got a way of demonstrating how the proportions of those count for the rest of the module. So will we be having...
I think we should have some tea. That's a very good idea, yes. I think we'll have some tea. Although it's International Coffee Day, we'll have some tea. Now, you had a particular chart that you were using as well.
Yes.
So you'd broken down the various components, and that's quite helpful.
Yes,
what are the best bits of it? Oh, sorry, I'm going to just get some tea, please.
Yes.
This is my tea bell, by the way. Michelle gave it
lovely.
to me. Yeah,
yes.
so
oh, thank you
very much.
Oh, yeah, thank you. And what's the best thing to have with a tea? With a cup of tea, I wonder.
I know. Thank you. Have we got any pies back there?
Pie?
Yes.
Why would we have pie?
Indeed.
It was worth enough. So we can but try. Okay, back to assessment.
Okay. So people do worry, though, about assessment and passing, and it was one of those things that we saw on our word cloud when people say, I'm really worried about failing. But Joseph said, you know, if you work with your tutor and you sort of try really hard, then it's very likely you'll succeed.
Absolutely. And the assessment guide, which all students will have in their packs, it's got...
Oh, this part.
A pie chart.
There we go, a pie chart, yes. Lovely jubbly.
Put that on my non-edible biscuit. Right.
Yeah, so the assessment guide has got absolutely everything you need in it, and it's all written in there. But sometimes it's more helpful to have a visual representation of what these things mean, which is why we've got a beautiful pie.
Okay.
Do you have anything I could use to slice?
Oh, yes, I do, actually. Hang on.
Thank you.
I always have a knife, yeah.
Yeah.
I also
Knife
have a whistle as well, just for managing guests, because we've run a very tight schedule with time.
Absolutely. So, if we imagine that this rather lovely pie, I'm sure it's homemade,
No, it's not.
represents all of the assessment pieces that a student will be doing while studying Access. Now I'm going to do some very, very excellent cutting. Let's go. So, oh no, oh goodness. That's not like Bake Off, is it? Right. So if I first of all do that, and then move your tea, yes, and then that, and then that. And we're going to start eating this in a minute. It might be a little bit mushed at that point, but I think we'll be okay.
Right.
Right, here we go. We're getting there. We're getting there.
Way around.
Yeah. I would not be passing my culinary course here. Right, okay. So first of all, let's move these bits out of the way. Now,
Lemon around.
Karen, could I give you TMA 01?
Oh, yes, please. Well,
There we
it's a
go.
smaller bit. I'm not quite sure.
There we go. Well, we'll start with that and see how we get on.
thank
Now,
you.
TMA 01 is 10% of the pie. So once you've submitted TMA 01, that's 10% of all of the assessment that you can get. And the mark that you get for TMA 01 counts towards your final mark. Now, Sarah, I'm going to give you TMA 02.
Okay.
There we go. Now we can see that this is a slightly bigger slice.
We can stick these flags
No.
in there, actually. As well to show the portions, if we like, George.
Yes, lovely.
Because we
Lovely.
like doing...
Oh, marvellous. Right. I'm very nervous about this knife, so I'll pop that
I've
down for a
got
second.
TMA 1.
TMA 01.
Yeah.
I've got 2.
and TMA02.
Thank you.
There we go.
So once you've done those, not a huge amount left. You've sort of
Yeah.
bitten off most
Well, so
of
that's
it.
a quarter of your
Yeah,
pie
quarter
done
done.
there. Lovely. So, and as we can see, this means that the assessments that you're doing at the start, they do count towards your final
They are,
mark,
Sarah.
but only a small proportion, only a very little slice and a slightly bigger slice.
Okay, so it's getting more and more important, and
Absolutely.
you're saving sort of the bulk, I guess, of your marks till the end.
Absolutely. So you've studied
When you're
more
really
of the
good.
course. Yes, exactly. You've had more chance to demonstrate your skills and to learn and to study all the units, so you're in a much more confident position. Then we've got this nice big chunk here, which
Yeah.
is a quarter of the pie.
Yeah.
Now that is TMA03.
Yeah.
So that is worth. There we go.
Are you having TMA03, George?
I might.
Well, we
It's no
don't have any
favouritism.
more
Oh, let's give way.
plates, actually.
No, it's all right. Well, I'll just have whatever's left on here. That's fine. And then we've got another little slice here, which is the same size as Karen's, which you can have as well if you'd like that, which is the ICMAs. So they are the interactive computer marked assignments, quizzes,
Yeah.
that you will study as you're doing blocks 2 and 3. And there are 5 of those, but together they add up to 10% of the mark.
They're 2% each.
Yes.
So they're just like the little online quiz. They're quite easy,
Yeah,
actually, aren't
they
Yeah,
are.
yeah,
They
yeah.
are quite easy. They're just a different way of being assessed. And one of the best things about them is you work out how they work,
Yeah,
so that you'll meet them later on in your study and you're already kind of familiar
But
with how they
silly to
work.
lose that piece, because it all adds up. Even though 2% doesn't seem like much, it's quite a
Might
big
make the
proportion, isn't it?
difference.
Yeah.
Might make the difference. And then the big chunk, which I shall give to John later, is TMA04, which is 40% of your marks for the course. So it's obviously the biggest piece of pie. And as you might have picked up the subtle message from the video that you've just watched, that's the only piece that's compulsory.
Right.
So even if you've done fantastically well on everything else, you still absolutely need to do your best for TMA04
And submit it.
submit that. Yes, absolutely. So that is access assessment via a lemon meringue pie.
Brilliant. Bite-sized chunks all the way. Excellent. So we've seen some key things there, and that looks all very simple when we do it with a pie.
Yes.
But these proportions, especially if we haven't done maths for a long time, can be difficult to make sense of. But fear not, because we have a handy assessment
Exactly.
calculator which works out all of these various proportions,
Yes.
and students can put their marks in.
Would you like some pie?
Oh, that was a snide move, George.
It's fine.
Concentrate on the assessment.
Okay, yeah, I have to concentrate on the assessment calculator.
Show us the assessment calculator.
Yes.
Actually, let's just take a quick trip to the hot desk as well, because George wants a sneaky bite of the pie. And it's the only way to get us off camera.
Well, a lot of us are very jealous of the pie. We do reckon that you should share with us. We might have to cut it into very small pieces, maybe ICMA size pieces, in order for us all to have some. Dominic supports the fact that I should probably have TMA04 for being on the desk today. I think I agree with that. Julie and Kerry, they are very hungry looking at this pie. And Paul didn't know you'd be torturing us with pie today. So we're all off to get some pie of our own, and we're having ours with lots of coffee today.
Yeah, my favourite is somebody suggested we need to start hashtag share the pie.
Yes. Yeah.
There's a whole campaign here in the chat, so be careful.
Yeah, online learning offers a lot of things, but not really the potential for squishy sharing of pies. OK, Sarah, can you talk us through this assessment
Yes.
calculator and show where it is?
So for those of us who aren't visually minded or cake minded indeed, there is a really, really handy gadget on Student Home, and it applies to all modules, not just Access modules, but it's a really nice thing to play with. Like we said before, you can't break it, so you can mess about with it and do whatever you want. It's something maybe not to worry about too much at this stage, but we thought it would be nice for people to know where it is. So I think we've got a slide to show via Student Home.
Yeah.
Students can find it. If they scroll down to the bottom, there's a...
So this is a map of the module website, which isn't the slide that we want to see. We want to have a look at the assessment calculator, which is from the Access module. So we'll just see if we can dig that out. I've got so many slides. I bet they've got a separate pie, because I ordered an apple crumble the other day. Yeah, so I bet they're all eating backstage.
Yeah.
So we'll have a look at the assessment calculator in just a second.
Yeah.
But that's basically a really easy way of
It
calculating.
is. It does the maths for you, basically, which is really, really good. So it's a way of not having to worry too much about pi, but getting your proportions right. So you can basically fiddle about with different percentages. As you go through the module, you'll get marks. But until you have, or when you've got 2 marks, say, or 4 marks, you can play with other possibilities, and it tells you what the likely outcome will be. So it's a really nice thing to play about with.
Brilliant. We'll take a look at it in just a minute. HJ, Susan says that she thought I was really nice, but now she thinks I'm cruel, flaunting a lemon meringue pie. I think that a bit mean.
I'm not going to comment on that one, to be honest.
No, all right.
I still think you should check.
Okay. Let's go back to the assessment calculator. We've got it now, so let's take a look at it in all its magnificence.
Okay, so this is on the Access Module front page. We've got YO32 there as an example. So if you click onto the assessment link that's highlighted there, that takes you through to another page. And then at the bottom there, I think I haven't got my glasses on, but it says work out your score using the assessment calculator. And at that point, it will take you through to another page, which is all blank at the moment because we're at the beginning of the module and people haven't got their scores. But then I think one of the other things we wanted to say at this point is, although the scores are really important, they're probably not the most important part of the assessment
Having fun is the
feedback.
most important
Exactly.
part.
But also your tutor gives you really, really good written feedback and says what you've done well, most importantly, what the things that you could improve on, and then you get the score. So those are the two things are probably the things that we'd want you to concentrate on.
No, absolutely, because we've all seen how everyone is learning for confidence and many other things other than just passing. But let's just talk about the passing here, because the calculator's really good, even though I appreciate it's not the most important thing. So these scores then, they're sort of added in there. So as you go through and those boxes, they'll start filling out. And then you can, which is the best bit, play around and put your scores in that you want to get.
And you can't break it, so you can just mess about as much as you want, and you can put different scores in. So I think we've got an example of the situation that George is in with the scores that she's got for. I think we've got the first two in there. So in a situation perhaps where George is busy, she's got quite a lot on still. She's saying to her tutor, I'm not sure if I can do this next assignment. And her tutor might say, well, why don't you have a look at the assessment calculator, try and work out what score you would need to pass. So George thinks, well, what if I miss out the next assignment because I am really busy still and my child's ill and I'm going to see. So by trying out some different scores, you can put I think we've got another example of the scores on the next sheet. If George plays around and says, okay, if I miss the next one out and put a 0, but I am going to do some of my other activities, so I'm just going to play around, put some examples in, and then if you press the calculate button at the bottom,
ta-da!
dun, 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 you can see that the score there is that it isn't a pass overall on the overall result, although there would be a resubmission. So at that point, George thinks, actually, maybe I do need to do this assignment. George talks to her tutor, and her tutor says, well, why don't I give you a short extension, George?
Lovely.
Bit more time to do it, and also some advice about what to concentrate on, because, you realise you've not got very much time, but it's really important to get something in. So you and your tutor come up with a plan, and then you do submit the assignment.
I do.
And we've got another worked example of what scores somebody might get. Now, with the assessment calculator, the more scores you put in, the more realistic the result is. So it's always better to put something in. It's always better to submit as an assignment as well. So that's the other side of that. So when George has got the advice from her tutor, she does manage to get everything in. And then I think if we press the calculate button again, this time, hooray! George has passed the module. So although it perhaps is a bit soon to be worrying about something like this, it's a really nice thing to play with, and I think it shows that the technology supports students in working out where they're going and what to do next, really.
And the important things you've said there are, that George was reaching out for her tutor, also speaking to the student support team as well. Plus, this calculator is very snazzy and good, but you can also phone the student support team and say, hey, what am I doing? Am I doing all the right things to pass? Because they'll know.
Absolutely. And in fact, I was talking to somebody about this yesterday, and they were saying, and of course, if someone's not sure about how it works, they can just ring us up, and that's always an option. But you can't break it. So actually, there's good instructions. Play around.
Which can't be said for the pie.
No.
And ask for help if you're not sure how it works.
Brilliant. So let's just end with our polls, because we asked people whether they'd had a look at the assessment. 73% have. Well done. Very important. Good to put those dates in the diary also, and gear up for all of that and have a look at the questions so you can focus your reading. 81% say that they do know where to look for and find out how to pass. That's here, but it's also in the assessment guide. So it's really important that they can do that. But let's take a look finally at the feelings about assessment in our word cloud and see what people had to say about that. nervous, worried, excited, but nervous, want to do well, interested, nervous and apprehensive, not being good enough, methodical, planning, challenge, helpful, unknown, not sure, exciting, horror, oh dear, scary, maybe the snake is still influencing things. Am I good enough, terrified, I'd rather have an assessment than a snake though, to be completely honest. Word count, interesting. So people are adding lots of things there about various aspects that they're worried about. And fair enough, you know, this is something new. It's something that if people haven't done, that's all completely valid. But their tutors will help. And the best advice I think we can give is to have your tutorial with your tutor and speak to them about the assessment and say, hey, this is how I'm going to do it. And bear in mind that they're feeding back on stuff. And while we can often feel a bit anxious about assessment because, you know, it might be a long time since we've had something marked, the tutor's doing it to sort of feedback and develop things. And you'll only get better through that development.
And TMA01 is a small piece of pie.
Oh, don't remind me, George. I know I have the smallest piece.
And if you look,
I think it's really unfair.
I'll swap it after, don't worry. But if you look in the assessment guide, the questions in TMA01 are largely about why you are studying, what it is you hope to get out of it. So really, you'll be writing about yourself and you're an expert in yourself. So not only are the stakes fairly low for TMA01 because it's a small piece of pie, but the most of the questions are just about you and your experience. So really, it's a great, great, great first step into assessment. And once you get the lovely, warm, thought out, considered feedback from your tutor, it will all feel like a completely different thing and you won't be worried at all.
The thing I love most about TMA1 is that learning plan. Because for students who do look ahead, as most of them are, they'll see that for TMA4 they reflect back on how far they've come. And obviously you can't reflect back on something if you don't write something down. And it's really worth, I think, spending some time thinking, what do I want to do? Why am I here? And writing those things, because as you say, they're about you can't get them wrong.
Can't get them wrong.
But the more you put in there, the more you've got then at the end to reflect on, and the better answer you'll have for that substantial TMA4.
Compulsory substantial TMA4.
Big piece of cake.
Well, thank you for explaining all of that to us. That's been really lovely, and I'm looking forward to now eating some of this pie. We're going to have a short video break, then we're going to come back. We're going to meet Tenji, who's an Access student who's come to the studio today, and also John and Jackie, and we're going to try and answer all of your questions in a quick fire round. So anything that we haven't covered, please do let us know, and we'll show you a quick video before then and see you in a few minutes.